Some things you see once and wish you could forget forever. But when the NFL is involved, they make sure you do forget, even if they have to pay you to erase it from your memory. This is the story of the night I was hired for what I thought was just another halftime gig, and ended up seeing something so disturbing behind the curtain that it still follows me to this day. If you think you know Taylor Swift, think again. It started like every other routine booking. I've been working behind the scenes in sports entertainment for years, running props, shuttling equipment, occasionally assisting with celebrity stage setups. It pays the bills, keeps me on the road, and lets me brush shoulders with people I'll never really know. That Tuesday morning, the call came earlier than usual. My phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. On the other end, a man with a voice like static said, "We've got a special one for you. High-profile halftime performance. They asked for you by name." I almost laughed. Me? Requested personally for a halftime show. Usually, you're just another name on a rotation list. But then he mentioned the pay. $20,000 for one night's work, and any thoughts of questioning it went right out the window. I've done enough gigs to know that kind of money doesn't land in your lap unless someone really wants you there. The pickup point wasn't at the stadium. That was the first red flag. Instead, they told me to meet a transport crew at a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of Miami. When I arrived, it didn't look like a place tied to one of the biggest sports organizations in the world. No banners, no signage, just a plain industrial building with security thicker than some military bases I've seen. Men in black tactical clothing moved like shadows, avoiding eye contact, loading the transport truck with plain brown crates. When I asked what was in them, no one answered. One guy finally approached my window, leaned in and said, "Drive this directly to the stadium. No stops, no detours, and whatever you do, don't open the cargo." He slapped an envelope onto my dash. Half the cash now, half when I finished. Crisp hundreds smelling like they'd never been touched. I should have turned the truck around right then. But $10,000 in hand and another 10 waiting makes you blind to a lot of warning signs. The route they gave me wasn't the usual city run. It wound through back roads, cutting away from the main freeway. The streets felt quieter than they should have, like even the traffic knew to stay away. At first, the cargo was silent, just the hum of the truck's engine and the occasional rattle as I hit a bump. But somewhere past Baton Rouge, my phone rang. The number was blocked. When I answered, a voice I didn't recognize said, "No matter what you hear, no matter what you think you see, keep driving." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. The call cut off before I could respond. That's when I started hearing it. A faint tapping from the back of the truck. I told myself it was just the boxes shifting, but deep down, I knew better. The tapping grew louder. Then came the whispers. Dozens of voices overlapping, urgent, desperate. And then, a scream, muffled, but real. It sliced through the air like it was meant to reach me, meant to pull me into whatever was back there. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. Every instinct screamed at me to pull over and see what I was hauling, but the memory of that phone call kept me locked in my seat. The noise stopped as suddenly as it started, but the silence wasn't comforting. It felt like something was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. Somewhere past the Texas line, my GPS flickered and reset. The route changed entirely. Instead of heading straight to the stadium, it now led me into a dense, unlit forest road. No signal, no radio, no way to contact anyone. That's when the whispers returned. Louder this time, almost inside the cab, and then a voice, clear as day, right behind me. "Help us." I slammed the brakes, heart in my throat. My eyes shot to the side mirror, half expecting to see faces pressed against the trailer walls. But there was nothing. As I drove on, shapes began appearing on the side of the road. Thin, pale figures with hollow eyes, turning their heads in unison as my headlights swept over them. Their mouths opened and closed like they were gasping for air, but no sound came out. I didn't slow down. The forest broke without warning, spitting me out onto a deserted service road that led straight to the back entrance of the stadium. I'd been in plenty of venues before, but this was different. No tailgaters, no scattered staff, no ambient hum of pregame chaos. Just floodlights and shadows. Security was waiting. Not the usual stadium guards. These men were the same ones from the warehouse, moving in perfect sync, their faces unreadable. They didn't speak to me, just signaled for me to back the truck into a gated loading bay. One stepped forward, eyes locked on mine, and said, "Stay in the cab until we tell you." I sat there in the dark, engine idling, watching in the side mirror as they opened the trailer. I expected to see crates stacked from floor to ceiling. Instead, the men stepped inside, disappearing into shadows that seemed thicker than they should be. When they emerged, they weren't carrying boxes. They were walking in pairs, each holding people, men and women. Their heads slumped forward, limbs hanging like puppets with their strings cut. Their skin was pale, almost waxy, like they had been drained of something vital. No one looked at me. Not the guards, not the limp figures. They moved silently toward a tunnel that led deeper into the stadium. The last man out closed the trailer doors, and only then did someone signal for me to step out. They led me through service corridors I'd never seen before, even in stadiums I'd worked for years. The walls were concrete, the air colder the deeper we went. My footsteps echoed like I was walking into an empty cistern. We stopped at a massive black curtain. Behind it, I could hear faint music, a piano riff I recognized instantly. It was the intro to one of Swift's biggest songs, stripped down and slow, like a version meant for no one but the people here. A man in a headset appeared beside me, his voice low but firm. "You don't speak. You don't move unless told. You keep your eyes forward. Understand?" I nodded, though my pulse was hammering. When the curtain parted, I stepped into another world. The space behind the stage wasn't the frantic mess of cables, crew, and equipment you'd expect. It was dim, almost candlelit, with long, heavy drapes absorbing every stray sound. And in the center, Swift stood completely still, facing a semicircle of those pale, drained people from the truck. I'd worked around performers before. The moments before a show are usually electric, stretching, vocal warm-ups, whispered pep talks. But Taylor wasn't doing any of that. She was watching them. Her eyes were locked on the group like she was reading something in their expressions. Or their souls. A man stepped forward from the shadows, dressed in a dark suit that looked too formal for a backstage crew member. He handed her something small, metallic, and thin. It caught the light like a blade. Without a word, she began moving through the group, her lips moving soundlessly. Each time she passed one of them, their heads would tilt back slightly, eyes fluttering as if they were in a trance. The music swelled faintly in the distance, the crowd out there roaring, clueless. Here, the air was suffocating, thick with something you could almost taste. And then, one of the pale figures collapsed to the floor. Not like they fainted, like they'd been emptied out completely. Tylor didn't flinch. She stepped over the body and kept going. I realized my hands were shaking. I don't know if I made a sound or if she somehow sensed me, but at one point she stopped. Slowly, she turned her head, her eyes locking directly onto mine. It wasn't the gaze of a pop star. It wasn't even human. Something cold slithered down my spine as she tilted her head, the corners of her mouth curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Stay," she said softly. The man in the headset stepped closer, his hand gripping my shoulder hard enough to hurt. "Don't move," he muttered, his breath hot against my ear. Tylor moved toward me, her steps deliberate, the faint glint of that metallic object still in her hand. She stopped just close enough for me to see something strange in her pupils. Not black, not brown, but shifting like liquid shadow. "You shouldn't be here yet," she whispered. Before I could answer, someone called her name from the far end of the curtain. She held my gaze a second longer, then turned and walked away, vanishing into the stage lights. The roar from the stadium exploded as soon as she stepped into the light. Out there, she was the Tylor everyone knew. Radiant, flawless, every note hit with precision. The crowd screamed like their lives depended on it. But from where I was standing, just behind the curtain, the performance didn't feel right. Every time she sang a certain line, one of the pale figures would twitch, their heads jerking slightly as if pulled by invisible strings. They weren't watching her like fans. Their eyes were rolled upward, their lips moving silently, like they were reciting something in sync with the music. Between songs, she would step back toward the curtain, just out of view of the cameras, and the man in the dark suit would press his hand against hers. Each time, something small and glimmering would change hands. I couldn't tell if it was jewelry or something else entirely. The music masked most of what I heard, but every so often a phrase would cut through, not part of any lyric I knew. Words that felt older than the stadium itself. By the third song, two of the pale figures were on the ground. No one reacted. Not the stagehands, not the NFL reps standing nearby. They didn't even blink. When the last note hit and fireworks boomed overhead, Tylor didn't stay to bask in the cheers. She turned sharply, heading straight for the back area, her breathing heavy, but not like she'd just sung to 70,000 people. Her eyes darted over the group, counting them. One of the pale ones had collapsed completely, sprawled against a crate. Without hesitation, she knelt beside them, placing her palm flat against their chest. I swear I saw something dark seep from their skin into her hand, vanishing into her. Their breathing stopped entirely. I backed up a step, my heel catching on a cable. The sound made her look up. That same smile from before. Thin, too still. "Come here," she said, her tone light but with a command buried in it. I shook my head, trying to keep my face neutral. I'm just crew. Before I could finish, the man in the headset appeared again, his grip on my arm like a vice. Don't refuse, he whispered. She stood now, brushing non-existent dust from her hands. The pale figure at her feet didn't move. You've seen more than you should, she said, stepping toward me. Her voice wasn't angry. It was almost curious. That means you're either a problem or you're useful. I felt the room tighten around me. The curtain, the drapes, even the walls seemed to lean inward. Everyone here gives something, she continued. Everyone plays their part. You haven't played yours yet. It was said casually, but I understood the weight. Whatever these people had given, it wasn't something they were getting back. She reached out her hand, palm up. You want a future? You want to be part of something bigger than the game? I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat was dry, my chest tight. Somewhere in the distance, the stadium crowd was still roaring, unaware that a completely different performance was happening back here. Her eyes locked on mine. I saw movement in them again, that shifting liquid shadow, and for a split second I felt the floor tilt beneath me. A voice broke the tension. Tylor, they're ready for you. It came from deeper in the hallway, and when I turned my head I saw someone unexpected, a young girl, maybe late teens. She looked pale and sleepless, her eyes darting between Tylor and me. She didn't say another word, just tilted her head toward a side corridor. Tylor glanced at her, then back at me. That too wide smile slipped for the first time. She's not ready, Tylor said, her voice lower now. The girl didn't answer. She just kept her eyes on me and stepped into the corridor. The man in the headset didn't stop me when I moved. I followed her through the maze of halls. They didn't look like normal stadium corridors. No painted cinder block, no event signage, just tight, featureless passages lit by buzzing overhead lamps. You shouldn't be here, she whispered as we walked. She doesn't choose people. The NFL doesn't either. The place does. I didn't ask what she meant. We reached a small, unmarked door. She pushed it open, and to my shock, it led straight outside to a narrow service road that skirted the stadium. No security, no cameras, just open air. She grabbed my wrist. Don't come back. Once they show themselves, they follow you. I didn't wait for her to say more. I ran. By the time I reached my car, my chest was burning. I didn't look back until I was on the freeway, the stadium lights shrinking in my rearview mirror. The next morning, an envelope was slid under my apartment door. No note, just $30,000 in unmarked bills. I never heard from the NFL about the job. The contact who'd booked me stopped answering calls. My name was quietly removed from several stadium crew lists. Weeks passed, but the feeling didn't. I'd catch glimpses in store windows, in the dark reflection of a bus shelter, of something behind me. A shape, too tall, too still, and sometimes I'd hear it, that same soft voice from behind the curtain. Stay. I tried to go back to normal. I stopped taking big gigs, stuck to small local events where the most dangerous thing you might face is a drunk fan or a bad lighting rig. I told myself the money from that night was just a bonus, nothing more. But the truth is, I knew exactly what it was. Payment to keep my mouth shut. Still, the silence didn't stop the presence. It began small. A flicker in the corner of my eye when I walked past a mirror. A shadow that didn't match mine. A reflection in a window where no one was standing. I'd turn my head, and there'd be nothing there. Then the dreams started. Always the same. I'm back in that backstage room. The curtain sways. The stadium crowd roars faintly like they're a mile away. And Tylor is there standing too still, her pupils shifting like they're full of black water. She lifts her hand, beckoning. My legs move without my permission, and just before I reach her, I wake up, gasping, soaked in sweat. The more I tried to forget, the stronger it got. One night, a package arrived at my new place. No return address. Inside was a small pink stuffed cat. Its fur was matted, one button eye hanging by a thread. I hadn't seen it before, but the moment I touched it, my chest went cold. There was no note, just that toy. I threw it away immediately, but the next morning, it was sitting on my kitchen table. I live alone. That was the day I stopped sleeping through the night. It's been months now, and I've learned the pattern. It shows up more when I'm near anything connected to the NFL. A commercial, a news segment, even just a glimpse of a game on TV. I'll feel the air in the room get heavier, like something's pressing down on me. And sometimes I'll hear it, not from a TV, not from a speaker, but inside the room itself. That same low voice dripping with that halftime smile. You're almost ready. I don't know what I'm ready for. I don't want to know. If you're listening to this and you ever get an offer like I did, high pay, secretive setup, special request from a celebrity, think about what you're walking into. Some jobs aren't about the work. Some contracts aren't written on paper, and some performances aren't for the crowd. They're for something or someone watching from the shadows, just out of sight. The NFL didn't just pay me to forget. They paid me to leave the story unfinished, to keep whatever happened behind that curtain from bleeding into the real world. But I can't help thinking, maybe it already has. So if you're ever backstage and the air feels too heavy, if the music slows and the crowd seems far away, don't look behind the curtain. And if you do, don't let her see you.